the story, we cross to our correspondent in Kenya, Cyril Kimani, who's standing by. Sarah, so with President Kenyatta having confirmed that the 4 militants who made this attack yesterday, they're now all dead, what's the mood there in Kenya?
Well, there's still a lot of anxiety in the country. I'm standing now right behind me is where the attacks happened. The complex is just right behind me. The country is still very anxious because the president indeed has announced that 14 people died. He says the attackers were also killed. And indeed, he says the operations inside that complex have been called off and people should get back to normal life. But when you speak to people around here, there are a lot of people at a mortuary right down from here where I am who are still looking for their relatives. Inside the building, the mop-up operations are going on to see if there are any more remains in the building and whether there may be any people who may have lost their lives and have still not accounted for inside the building. So it's still very early to say that the country is getting back to normal. Indeed, it has not. A lot of people still talking about that attack. A lot of people still trying to come to terms with the effects of that attack.
And of course, Sarah, you know, they've killed these militants, but of course they come from somewhere. They can't just be working alone. So presumably there may be a fear that there may be more attacks imminently.
Yes, indeed, and the country has been on high alert since it sent its troops to Somalia in 2011. We've seen several attacks that followed that. We have the Garissa University attack in 2016 in which 150 students died. We have the Westgate Mall attack in which 67 people died. We have several attacks at the coast of Kenya. We have several attacks here in Nairobi, and so it's never safe in the country. You can never be quite sure that it will not happen where you are, but people continue with their daily lives because if you go to any place, the security is high, and you will notice if you're entering a mall, you will have to go through a security check. If you're going through a school or a church, you will still have to go the security checks. What people are saying is the Kenyans and Kenyan security officials and even owners of buildings up their security when an attack like this happens, and then as people forget that and people now go on with their normal lives, then people tend to forget and maybe their security lapses during that time, and then the attackers probably take advantage of such lapses.
And how do Kenyans feel about the government's performance in terms of intercepting intelligence and trying to prevent some of these things happening? Do they think that enough is being done?
Well, mixed reactions indeed. Some people feeling that maybe this attack could have been stopped. Others saying that the operations inside here this time to save lives were faster and more lives were saved than previously. In fact, the Secretary General of the Kenya Red Cross Society, Dr. Abbas Gulet, saying 700 people were rescued within the 18 hours that the attack took place, and within the 18 hours that this place has been cordoned off. So saying that unlike the Westgate attack, which there was a siege for almost 4 days, this time response has improved, but Kenyans still feel that the country can be secured better, especially at the borders where they feel most of these attackers slipping from Somalia.
Kenya enjoys a lot of tourism. Is there a concern that after events like this, in the short to medium term, it could impact tourism?
Well, yes, and businessmen are of course worried, and probably the reason why you see in that clip President Kenyatta reassuring both Kenyans and visitors that the country is safe, because anytime something like this happens, then tourism numbers dip, and we've just released the numbers for this year, which show that tourism grew by almost 15%. Tourism earnings grew by almost 15%. So the country is of course going to be worried that this may affect the country, especially coming from an election that really hurt the economy, and just when the country was starting to get back on its feet again, and then this attack happens. Of course, economists say the country may be shaken, but maybe not for long, depending on how the government responds and how they take it from here.
All right, Sarah, thanks very much for your report. That was Sarah Kimani. She's our East African correspondent. Nzinga?